have Lisa Courtice, who is President and CEO of the United Way of Central Ohio. Under her leadership, the United Way is helping to mobilize the Central Ohio community to reduce poverty. So a lot of you may have a perception of what the United Way does or did. It's changed, it's changing, and we're going to hear about that today. She is a Ph.D. psychologist with over 25 years of experience working in the nonprofit leadership arena. For the last 13 years, she served as Executive Vice President and leader of community research and grants management for the Columbus Foundation. How many of you knew that our Columbus Foundation is the 7th largest? Did you know that? Good. Yeah, Lisa was really a very popular person because she helped pass out some of the money, which is how I met her. She currently serves on the Prevent Family Homeless Collaborative. Her professional activities have included the Home and Health Impact Councils of the United Way of Central Ohio, the Wineland Park Collaborative, the Psychiatric Crisis and Emergency System Task Force of Central Ohio, Champion of Children Advisory Committee, and the Ohio Wesleyan University and Columbus School for Girls Board of Trustees. Lisa received her Bachelor of Arts from Syracuse, her Master of Arts from West Virginia, and her Ph.D. from the University of Akron. Now, what her bio on the website won't tell you. Lisa is a dog lover and a rescuer. Her pup, Frosty, came in number 10 in the coolest dog in Columbus contest. You will not be able to catch, or you are able to catch Frosty's mugshot on the label of the special North High Brewery beer that is being crafted in honor of all the coolest Columbus dogs.
How do you know that?
I'm not done yet. I got more. In 1980, when she was 5, Lisa had an internship at a very prestigious law firm in Washington, D.C. Of all the clients that you might think her firm would represent, it was Peaches and Herb that was her prestigious client. Herb. Does anyone remember the song? Yes. Reunited, and that's right. When Lisa's daughter, Lindsay, was younger, she used to tell her friends that her mom was a ventriloquist because she consistently confused the word with philanthropist. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Columbus's favorite ventriloquist, Lisa Courtice.
That's too funny. Well, thank you, and thank you for your interest in wanting to learn more about the United Way. And I have some ideas that maybe you spoke with Michael Wilkos. Maybe? But I'm surprised you bring up the coolest dog in Columbus because it was a Kiwanis fundraiser, and that seems like competition for this group. That's right.
We won't do, we'll find Mike.
So they just ran a contest to raise money for infant mortality, and they selected the 10 coolest dogs in Columbus. So, but you had to raise money. Every vote cost $1, so it ended up costing my family quite a bit to come into the top 10. But I was determined to get in the top 10. So I'm going to set my phone because I don't want to go over my allotted amount of time, which I understand that I have up to 30 minutes. And I hope that if you have questions, we can make this a conversation. Please raise your hand, and I might even call on you, like Teresa and other people I know, to have an interactive conversation about the United Way. Really would like to get as much feedback as I can from you and everyone in the community, as there's this moment in time here where I get to help lead the transformation of the organization, and I'll share with you why it needs transforming. So I'm going to cover a little bit of the state of philanthropy in our country to give you a context for how the United Way then fits into that, and talk about what I have learned about our United Way and how we might make it better in our response to these opportunities, and talk a little bit about community need and how the United Way is responding. So I've worked as a nonprofit manager and leader for 30 years, and been a 30-year donor to United Way. I've run a United Way agency, which has been really helpful to have that experience. When I first moved to Columbus, I led New Directions Career Center. So it was great that I have been on the side where I know what it means to have to do the reporting and fill out the application and be accountable to the donor monies. And then when I was the executive director for several years of Childhood League, we count 10% of our budget came from donor designated gifts. So many of you generous people who give through United Way, but not necessarily to the work of United Way, accounted for 10% of our revenue, which was a really important source of revenue for Childhood League. And then in the last 14 years in my role at the Columbus Foundation, I've been a partner with United Way. So I was really attracted to the role because we need a strong United Way. We need as many strong organizations as possible. We have lots of problems in our community and a growing disparity between the haves and the have-nots. And it's going to take a lot of organizations and a lot of people and a lot of talent to close those gaps. But let me start out with philanthropy today. So Giving USA's been tracking how much giving takes place in our country for about 30 years. And this provides you a snapshot. So the yellow bars are how much individuals give each year. The blue bar is foundations. The purple is through bequests. And the orange is corporations. So clearly you can see there's only one, really, the most prosperous, strategically important goal for fundraising is the individual. Yet so many of us think it's the foundation or the corporation. But the only growth that you see is with individuals. And this is in billions, right? So it's so significant. And nonprofits really, you know, I have a lot of opinions about this, but so I won't get totally on a rampage here, but nonprofits struggle each year to raise their money, start at zero each year and have to raise their money, and really never have the luxury or afford themselves the luxury to cultivate individuals. Yet that's where most of the money is in terms of new opportunities for nonprofits. The largest contributor to our sector, the nonprofit sector, is government funding. So the real threat as we think about potential budget cuts, and we have many nonprofits in our community right now quite frightened about potential federal budget cuts because that could make or break our safety net and the nonprofits that our community really relies on. So for 30 years, the Chronicle of Philanthropy has tracked the largest charities in the country. And until last year, United Way had been the largest charity in the country. It is still the largest charity in the world. So who do you think surpassed, for the first time in 30 years, the United Way as the largest charity in the country? And you said who? Gates Foundation? No. Good guess, though. Yes?
Some donor advised fund.
Yes. Who are you, smart person?
Hello, I'm Clint Travis.
So, all right. The Fidelity Charitable surpassed the United Way as the largest charity in the world, in the country. And of course, that's where donor advised funds are housed. Now, you know, with a donor advised fund, and I'm all about the donor advised fund. I come from the community foundation world and use that as a giving vehicle myself. But there is no mandatory payout for a donor advised fund. You can establish one at the Columbus Foundation for $10,000 minimum. And you can take your lifetime to spend that money out or never spend the money out and leave it to your family. You gain interest on that principal. You can leave it in there for years and gain interest. And there's no mandatory payout, which is the problem that Congress has, because there's so much money sitting in those funds, and you've gotten the tax deduction, so you've reaped the benefit of it, but you haven't given the monies to the community to put it to work. The third largest contributor out of Fidelity Charitable, contributions are going to the third largest, to United Way. So it feels a little bit like a shell game, right? So anyway, it's complicated up in those billions of dollars. it's so much fun to watch United Way do so well in other countries. It's new and it's innovative and it's taking off, like in Korea and Africa, and workplace giving is new. Workplace giving is not new in our country, and it has been disrupted. It is a disrupted model. So there was a time, United Ways are now 100 years old, where we cornered the market, and work was different. We went to work, and we tended to work someplace for 30 years. We got behind the CEO of the company. We did what he or she wanted us to do, and in terms of what the charitable interest of the corporation would be. And work, it just isn't like that. You can work for Nationwide now or AEP now and never actually go to an office. So you're not a part of that corporate culture and not behind their charities of choice. So we've been a disrupted model, and we got behind as an industry in terms of having an online presence. So now there are all kinds of disruptors in corporations, companies that have come in and do the online giving. Now the campaign might still be a United Way campaign, but the campaign is run by a Truist or a Benevity, and these are online platforms that reap some benefit, financial benefit. But the problem for United Ways is that they don't necessarily have to tell us who our donors are. So if you're at X corporation and it's raising $2 million a year through Benevity, we get the $2 million check, but they never tell us who the donors are. And then the next year comes around and donors say, but you haven't talked to us in a year, and you don't really care that we can't, you just want us to, but we can't. So it's caused all kinds of problems. So we've been really disrupted as an industry, and our trend line is going down. It's still almost $4 billion is raised through United Way in our country each year, but the trend line continues to quietly but consistently decrease as you have more and more opportunities online and other ways to give. And you now can give through GoFundMes and all kinds of ways to give that you no longer have to have the United Way. I was really attracted to the role because I really believe in workplace giving, that many of us wouldn't be able to make a $100 contribution or a $1,000 contribution if we weren't able to take it out of our a payroll deduction, right? Most Americans don't have $2,000 in savings. They couldn't write a $2,000 check for philanthropy. But spread out over a year, you don't feel it quite as much. And then also, it's where so many people learn about the needs of the community is through online workplace giving. So lots of disruption. So I was attracted to saying, wow, what is the future of workplace giving? And how can I be a part of a solution to make it stronger or to find its new relevance? So I thought you'd find it interesting that, 50 years ago, you gave to the Impact Fund at a United Way, and the United Way board approved grants out into the community. It was a community chest model, and we did the research to understand what the most pressing needs in the community were. And then we really needed to meet donors where they are, opened it up, so now you can give through the United Way. And so we might not be, you can give to animals if you so choose, but we wouldn't necessarily, our work is about reducing poverty, and working with animals is not one of our strategies, as an example. So the purple blue is gifts that are coming to the work of a United Way to reduce poverty. And the green are donors who are giving to their choice, and it's not about reducing poverty. And it's interesting just to compare, because when I give presentations, people are always wanting to know how we compare to Cincinnati and to Cleveland. Cincinnati's got it going on. It's one of the premier United Ways in the country, and we could really attribute that to this long-standing, amazing support from Procter & Gamble. There are 22 what they consider largest United Ways in the country, and your United Way, Central Ohio, is one of them. And we are the only one that remains of the largest 22 that serves one county. So we serve Franklin County. As an example, Cincinnati serves 10 counties that include counties in Indiana and in Kentucky. And Cleveland serves 3 counties. So per capita, we actually are bigger than Cleveland and Cincinnati. So we have 80,000 donors and volunteers that help us each year leverage about $50 million. And 30% of the monies of the 50 million are going to agencies other than the ones that our board has selected to reduce poverty. Our largest giving category is Tocqueville, and you can see Cincinnati on the left, Cleveland in the middle, Columbus on the right. And Cincinnati and Cleveland just have this older wealth. We just have new wealth in our community. And I've been hearing it throughout my career that the fundraising and the opportunities for support are much greater in Cleveland and Cincinnati because of their older wealth and the number of foundations that they have, trusts that our community just doesn't have. We particularly, as many of you who support the arts know, we don't have it in the arts. We're really under-endowed compared to Toledo and Cleveland and Cincinnati. So we run 400 workplace campaigns, and of those 400 campaigns, 42 are in the Columbus Partnership, and they help us raise $33.6 million. So the Columbus Partnership's really important to the United Way, and 38% of employees participate. So one of the statistics that I learned when I came on board, which was really alarming, was that 37% of our revenue comes from 3 companies. Who are they? Teresa, which one do you think is on that list? Nationwide's one, AEP, and L Brands. So when you think about the vulnerability we have as a model there, all we need is one CEO change to really throw off the stability of the sector, because I'm less worried about our organization, but we're really important to many nonprofits who otherwise don't have the sophisticated fundraising ability that are serving our most disenfranchised populations. So it is critical that we diversify our portfolio. So we know workplace campaigns are our bread and butter now, but if we continue to rely on them, the business people that are much smarter than I am predict that in 30 years, we'll be out of business. The trend line continues to go down. People are working differently. So we have to diversify our portfolio. So I went on a listening tour in my first 6 months and spoke with as many nonprofit leaders, people that were served by nonprofits, corporate CEOs, corporate leaders, community stakeholders, politicians, and heard a lot. And I heard things like, we don't know where the money goes. You're running direct service programs. We don't think you should be running direct service programs. You're not a good partner. You're not as strong of a partner as you need to be. It's a lot of money, and poverty isn't being reduced. So it was really enlightening, and it was really fun to hear all that as I went around town and got all that good encouragement to go back to my office. And so what we know is that we need to do a couple of things. So in response to that, we have been running 5 initiatives, and they are direct service, providing direct service in the community. An example would be Columbus Kids. We've been helping to assess children, young children, to make certain that they are ready for kindergarten. And there was a time when it made sense for that to be at the United Way because the community wanted this service but didn't quite know where it should be. So we said we would take it, make it strong, and what we've done is we've hung on to it. So we've been really criticized in the community for competing against other nonprofits that we're supposed to be serving, duplicating resources when we're supposed to stand for aligning resources. So we've made the decision to transition all direct service from our organization, which by the end of the year, we will be out of the direct service business. We have a renewed emphasis on creating partnerships. And we've had a significant, we're planning for a significant reduction in our operating budget. So over the years, as our campaign goes down, I wouldn't say our organization has grown, but it has not been right-sized to meet the campaign size. So over the next year, we will reduce our budget by 8%. So that's really significant, and this budget that will be approved by our board tomorrow will be a reduction by 4%, and then next year an additional 4%. And we've hired a new data science team that will be really looking at, we have real-time data. We're funding 60 organizations who are working to reduce poverty. And we have real-time data every day because we asked for it to come in. And we have a new data science team that can report out on a regular basis and be truly accountable to our community and to the donors who are so generous in their gifts to us. So the future model of United Way will also include online giving, and we recently had a what we called Knockout Poverty, which was quite successful. So we'll be expanding our online giving platform. We'll be working on transformational gifts, which are donors who want to work with us, who have larger 6- or 7-figure gifts, who want to work with us to reduce poverty. And an example would be Barb and Al Seamer, who work closely with us, who were very upset because they wanted kids to not move schools so often. So you hear from teachers in the public school system who say, half of my kids at the beginning of the school year are no longer in my classroom. I have a whole different set of 15, 20 kids than I did at the beginning, and it's so disruptive to learning. So they wanted to reduce that and realized that most families were moving out of schools into different districts because they were being evicted, and they needed a new place to live, and then it didn't align with where their kids were going to go to school. So they have a homelessness prevention program, which has 98% effectiveness rate, and they're now in 53 cities using the United Way model to reach families in each of those cities. So we'll be working with more donors who want to make those transformational gifts. We're also testing other ideas for innovating philanthropy. And then we're also looking, I don't know if you're familiar with our building on 3rd and Mound, but it's the best of 1975. And so we're talking with developers right now about developing that block and hoping that we can actually generate some of our own revenue in the development of a new project, which will also, we hope, illustrate what we're about, and so it will have a social value. We're not exactly certain what it'll look like, but it could be anywhere from workforce housing. So you provide services. Let's say you're a janitor or hospitality staff, and you can't afford to live downtown. Well, we might offer workforce housing, so you actually can afford to live downtown. And so we're really excited to be exploring that as well. So hopefully you've heard the poverty statistics, but when we think about community need, so do you know how many people there are in Franklin County?
1.2 million.
Oh, wait a minute, you're looking up my chart, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Oh, darn, all right, good. Where do you see it?
It was on a prior screen.
Oh, you're reading the slides, that's so good. All right, good. All right, so we have 1.2 million people in Franklin County. 1 in 3 of us lives at 200% or poverty or below. So you don't have to raise your hand, but think, how often do you see these people who are living at 200% of poverty or below? One of the challenges with our city is we're geographically spread out. We're a really large city. And so my concern sometimes is that many of us can go to work and then we can go home and we don't see that 1 in 3 of us can't meet their basic needs without really the support of the nonprofit sector and social sector. And what that means is, so for a family of 4 to be at 200% or poverty or below, you earn a salary of about $42,000. Well, you know what? You're 1 car repair away from not being able to pay your rent. So that's not sustainable for a community that's so proud of how much our economy is booming and how many cranes there are in the air, when 1 in 3 of us has to work multiple jobs in order to only then be 1 car payment away from living in poverty or from not being able to pay their rent. And we have this very low unemployment of 4.3%. That means most of us who are able to work, and it's easy to work, are working. But what about the rest of us who are no longer in this statistic because we're not trying to work anymore, or we're working multiple jobs, so it seems like we're employed, but we're really not earning a livable wage? Pre-Great Recession, the unemployment poverty rate, the poverty rate was about 10, 11%. That, not that we want anyone to live in poverty, but for a community of our size, that is where we need to be. Yet typically we're up at around 16.8, 17% poverty in our community. And it hasn't budged since the Great Recession. We haven't gotten back down to that 11%. So this is really not sustainable for a community like ours. And don't we want better for our community than to have the haves and the have-nots? Why it's not budging? Teresa, do you know? I keep picking on you, I know.
There are multiple things that are going on. Certainly the poverty issue, everything with that.
Literacy and
Malik?
cycles of poverty.
Can you say more about that?
Just a lot of people who, given a little support, they could probably have greater gains, but they're getting a return on investment relative to where they are. And just they need a slight impetus or slight push.
I've been working in Columbus and this field for 25 years, and to me, the community is worse off than it was. The people that, I wake up every day to think about how to best use donor dollars to help advance progress, and the community definitely feels worse off than it ever has. So we have several strategies that we're working on. So when you invest in United Way, you help us to invest in basic needs, good jobs, neighborhoods, and student success. So when I talk about this data science team, it's really hard to advance progress in each of these areas. So we did, as an example, when we looked at last year, we looked at all of the agencies that were funding and what the primary need was of the tens of thousands of people that were coming for services. And 83% of all people seeking services from the agencies we fund were looking for food and shelter first. So how do you get to a place where you can be a better student or get a good job if you can't meet your basic needs? So, I just grapple with this myself because, again, I wouldn't have to see people who are struggling like this if I didn't work in this space. If I just think about, I live in Bexley and then I drive downtown and that's what I would do. But it's so real in our community, and it erodes families and it erodes our community. When we look at, that's somebody's phone, not mine. I've got 6 minutes.
5 minute warning.
All right, 5-minute warning. When we look at barriers to employment, 25% of the people that are working through funded dollars of United Way agencies, 25% can't work because they're housing unstable. So we're particularly excited about new partnerships, but the work is hard and the work is complex, and we continue to work in neighborhoods, so our focus is in Linden. And on the south side, we've seen a lot of traction and a lot of gains in the Wyland Park community, so we are focusing on 2 new communities now. Student success, plugging away at that, high school graduation and kindergarten readiness. And with the county, strategizing about how we can all, public and private, work together to reduce poverty. And then with Drive Capital, which is Mark Kwame's firm, we're talking about how he's given us a challenge grant to be able to have people have more jobs in tech, in the tech field and IT. And he's predicted that in the greatest opportunity in tech moving forward in the next 5 years, we'll have our country will have 3 million jobs in cybersecurity that it doesn't have today. And so that's one of the greatest opportunities for employment. So we're working with programs like Perscolas and IC Stars, which help the kids that are with multiple barriers to employment, to gain employment. I guess you don't have to be a kid, but most of them are young people who are really more adept than some of the rest of us at technology. Malik, you're familiar with that? Yeah, good. What kind of questions do you have? Yes.
It's the two parts. Is the Red Cross still a member? And if they are, do they still have a special relationship where they're not really accountable to United Way, to local United Way?
I don't know about that special relationship. They are funded with almost $400,000 each year. We consider it a basic need, the services that we fund them to provide. And I don't know of a special relationship, but I could go back and check on that. Is that a bad thing?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right. There are two, one in the way back and then one in front of the way back.
Thank you. I have actually a couple questions. The first is, I wonder how you are preventing people from, you said you're helping them so that they did not have to move out of the present school district. I know when Columbus Rotary tutored at Livingston Elementary, around December, about 50% of the kids turned over. And the other thing I wondered is, I see several people standing on corners asking for money. Is there any kind of a sheet or anything like that that you have that we could hand these people and say, these are the opportunities for you to go and get assistance?
Two great questions. Yes, there is a sheet, and I can forward it to Mike so that everyone has that sheet about how you should respond, because I got that sheet because I regularly have people saying, how do I respond? How do you suggest that I respond to someone on a street corner? And so there with various options that they can take, yes. And then the part about school mobility is really complicated, but what Columbus City Schools has done is they've hired parent liaisons, so they actually earn a stipend, and they work in the schools to try to be ahead of families who are getting close to being evicted but aren't evicted, to work with them, but also to have them understand that just because you might end up leaving this school, we'll pick your child up wherever you are to bring them back to this school. And so many parents aren't aware of that. And you know what, when they're trying to meet their basic needs, we've found that parents don't have the resilience to deal with their child needing to be in school when first they've got to figure out food and shelter. So it's complicated. Yes. Dave.
Last year I read about Columbus was planning to hire a lot of social workers for their school system because they recognized that the problem is deeper than what teachers can handle or are trained to handle. And I understand that a lot of that was cut out because of a reduction in state aid. Is there any way you can help supplant that? Because that seems to be one of the keys to many of the things you mentioned. Someone who really knows social development to deal with the kids that aren't making it.
Right. It costs so much money. So we have programs that are in schools, but we would never have the resources to take on the district. I once heard Melinda Gates speak, and she said, people want they want the Gates Foundation to solve problems in California's school system. That's it, I'm done. People want me to solve problems in the California school district, which aren't dissimilar to our problems. Our foundation at the time, she said, the Gates Foundation had $37 million, which isn't even the annual budget. $37 billion, which isn't even the annual budget of the California schools. So it's not about money. No one has enough money. So it's so complicated, and every day you just believe that you have to chip away at it. And I wish that there was a silver magical bullet, but there's not. Yeah. Yes.
Do you see the new tax laws having an impact on your donation?
Well, we certainly hope not. So what we don't know is, so for the people who are in higher income levels, we're not as concerned about that. There'll be more incentive to give larger gifts at one time. And we did have more donors who wanted to play multiple years at the end of last year to get ahead and get the tax deduction. What we don't have research in philanthropy on is middle income people and how important deduction and itemizing is. So it's an unknown. So we pulled nonprofits together to say, how concerned are you that you might lose contributions? And they were much more concerned about the federal budget perhaps being cut and their government funding being cut than they were philanthropy. But the United Way Worldwide has suggested that all United Ways, there are 1,600 in the country, prepare to reduce their budgets by 8%.
One more question.
One more question. Who should I pick?
Hands up, hands up. Paul, you're going to be in trouble. Jim Bishop.
Hi, Jim.
So I have like a 15-part question. Just bundle them to me, write them down, and I'll just ask it right in. Actually, I have a two-part question, but I kind of want to address the new federal rules. You have a platform to stand on to talk about payroll deduction as pre-tax. It is taken out before deductions, before your taxes, and it is the true pre-tax unlimited deduction up to the limits of your payroll deduction plan that you do. So it's a great way to kind of sidestep that whole conversation. Yeah. But that said, you are over-reliant on 3 different corporations for your payroll deduction programs. There are decision makers in this room who have the ability to influence their companies having programs. Where would they go to talk to somebody about it? And part 2, that's a plug for Teresa for another federation. Yes. And what about nonprofits who are not United Way, but you would like to direct money to them? There are collaboration programs. Could you address kind of both of those?
So the one is if you're not a United Way, and then the other one is
if we have a company that we wanted to create a payroll deduction or a partnership and payroll
talk with me.
How simple is it to do it?
Oh, it's really simple. Yes, and we would prioritize it. So absolutely, yes. So I would put you in touch with one of my colleagues who could make that happen. So if you give through United Way of Central Ohio to nonprofits, we actually have a fee that's 10%. And so what's one of my goals is to reduce that fee. So I'm on it, but it won't happen this first year. But we do count on that revenue to fund overall fundraising operations. So you can give to any charity in the country through us. We do charge a fee to do that. And Teresa, do you want to add?
Just that I think, at least for community chairs, and I'm sure part of yours too, is that whole pre-tax dollars message that we need to constantly share. Because that will affect most of the middle class.
This is it. My hook is here. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa. Very important information for us. And Mike Rankin, I'm going to need you to put $5 in the fine jar. Only I give the 5-minute warning. All right. Now remember, next week, vocational lunches. We're beating this horse again. Not here. Go to your respective places where you signed up. But the following week, we're going to have another great speaker, as Scott indicated, with Honda. So have a great week, and we'll see you when we see you. Thank you.